before we're even up. But then again, Mike is saying good morning, and he's always on his he's getting ready for going out to do those school crossings.
Yeah. Be
That's
careful, Mike.
That's Mike for you.
It's getting dark out there.
Community. All right.
There's been a time change and it's dark out.
Yeah, but it's it's just getting light again now at 7:00.
Yeah.
Which is so weird because we went from light to dark and now we're light again. Okay, so big question for you: is snow on the way to Niagara? What's your thoughts, Dave?
Usually we get our first snowfall in November sometime.
They're saying as early as
we usually get our first snowfall.
Yeah, they're saying as early as next Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, you notice the temperature is plunging quite a bit and rather rapidly.
Yeah.
So I would say, look out for our snowfall.
There's one lady at work, Brianna, is basically saying to me, "Hey, those little plants you see on the roadside that have got the flowers on them that are flowering now," she says that they're usually 6 weeks away from the first snowfall.
Oh, okay.
She was saying
there's a little. Okay. All I know is we generally get a snowfall in November sometime.
Yeah, we haven't for the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, I got in a car accident because of a snowfall in November.
Oh, I get it, but I'm just saying the last couple of years we haven't had any sign of snow in November. It's been
maybe not, but it like I just remember that we usually get one.
Yeah.
And then it kind of gets dreary and rainy, and we really don't get much snow then thereafter. We might get a little bit in December, but then January and February, and of course, that's when we get our big dump.
Yeah. But it has been cooling down, and they're basically saying that meteorologist, environment, climate, and climate change. Stephen Flester, a meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada, said that some places in Ontario, mainly north and west of the GTA, are going to be getting lake effect snow coming off of Lake Huron.
Yeah, that's one of the snow belts, basically. Yeah. So that's all predictable too.
Yeah.
And it's wintertime on the way. That's just it, man. There's no avoiding it.
And they're basically saying we might get some next week, as early as next week, right? But we're likely to see some snow in the Niagara in the near future.
Well, let's get our skis ready.
Well, I gotta get my snowblower actually fixed. Used it last year, and the engine wouldn't restart, so just need to take it down to the guy who does the snowblower stuff.
Well, it sounds like it needs a bit of a tune-up, but don't. When you start it, did you put gas preservative in the tank?
Well, no, it was like going last year, and then one day it just basically died. Right? I was mid doing the thing, pushing back the snow, and it just died.
Okay.
I'd done most of it already, but
you had lots of fuel in it. You had fuel in it.
I had fuel in it, and it just died. Couldn't get it restarted. I haven't tried since, but I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll get the guy to check it out.
Yeah, it could be a tune-up, could be a block fuel line. Your
Exactly.
gas, yeah, something of that kind. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because best play it safe. Don't want to kind of. I don't want to kind of try it and have it go wrong on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the proposed budget is online, but if you wanted to actually contribute to the city budget, it's too late.
Is it too late?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The questions and comments have all been closed, but you can get at the actual budget online.
Yeah, you can find the budget online, and geez, yeah, that was open for some time, I think, but I had forgotten myself. But
yeah,
I don't think there's much room to play. I mean, concrete ping pong tables and things like that could be off the,
some of the areas that they were looking at is, how is your tax money spent? The taxes on our homes, regarding and water, fireworks, increasing revenue are all questions that came up on the survey. Right.
Yeah. So basically, I see there was a lot of talk about wants and needs a few times there, particularly when we were talking about what was going to happen in the Chippewa Arena / public library thing.
Yeah.
There was the wants and needs, and a lot of the plans were kind of reduced. What do we really need, and what do we want? The wants have to take a back seat, and the needs have to come forward, and those needs have to be utilized in the most efficient, least expensive way, if possible.
Yeah.
All the fancy stuff, the trails and the beautification of the area, whatever else, we'll have to just wait a while. We do have a lot of issues, particularly with roads. We talked about that, and part of the budget is designed towards that, towards improving roads. And when we have 50% of our roads good to very good, well, what about the other 50%? So you can really tell that, yeah, we're going to have to put some money into that. Basically, the other stuff, of course, is insights into how to invest in the city in other ways in which to help businesses and industry and whatever else, make it attractive here for them. So there's a number of things that the city council members have to look. And I was listening to Paul Lemire yesterday, and he said, you can't really drill down too far when you see this budget here. It just tells you the overall basics, but it doesn't tell you exactly what those are, kind of thing. When it says it needs, there's going to be $9 million with vehicles. Well, what vehicles are they? Well, I could tell you a little bit, because having known guys that work in the city, there are a lot of their equipment is old and it's taken a lot of money to repair.
At the end of the day, with vehicles and things like that, the city is into a program of replacement every year of a certain number of vehicles, and that's always going to be the fact.
Well, what was happening there for a lot of the vehicles that the city works department had, they were very outdated.
Yeah,
they were put back. I know for a fact when some of the trucks and stuff went, the bigger equipment went to get repaired, the repair people says, yeah, I could put it back together, but you're going to have to do this all over again next year. You need a new one. And that went on for years. Instead of spending $250,000 on a new truck, a dump truck or something, or some specialty truck, to get a brand new one, you were paying $80,000 every year to get the old one fixed.
Yeah. Well, you're going to still pay, even with a new truck, you're still going to pay maintenance costs anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, but
point
like
taken.
that.
Point taken. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
And anyone who knows
knows
machines, basically, anyone knows machines, and there is a point where you cannot patch it up. It costs you a lot more money to patch up what you've got than it does to get a new one. There is that line. But often any budgets, even industry and public services, they always want to stretch that because they haven't budgeted for it. So they stretch that and waste a lot of money on repairs. But don't see the big view.
But one of the things I would say about it is that, hey, those cars that are used by bylaw officers or or other other cars that are used. Now I'm emphasizing the word cars for a reason. Often those could be running for 2 or 3 or 4 more years later. Whereas the industrial vehicles that the city has, those shouldn't be.
No, it's like
little
put around cars. Yeah, they don't have a whole lot of kilometers on them because they don't go too far. Yeah, you can keep them going for quite a long time.
Yeah,
and they probably do. But it's the heavy equipment and the trucks and stuff like that that the city needs. Those are the things. Even a backhoe or something like that. You can't keep pushing the life of some of these things.
No, absolutely.
You have to get, you have to get more.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah. So, okay, moving on. Recycling services might well be ending soon for Niagara stores, restaurants, salons, and churches. This is leaving a lot of people kind of very concerned for what's going to happen with garbage collection for non-residential properties.
Yeah, it seems that the producers who are responsible for the recycling, in other words, the collection of companies and industries that produce stuff that needs to be recycled, are the ones on the hook to pay for it. And in our area, I think it's Miller that's got the contract with them to do that. But they do not want to pick up for other businesses the recycling. So what I see happening is a lot of that recycling is going to end up in regular garbage. Yeah. They say, oh, well, the business people, the small businesses, the small hairdressers, all that will then have to take the recycling home and put it in their own home recycling. No, I don't think so. I think it's going to go straight into regular garbage.
Well, I was going to say what I see would happen there is that you're going to kind of you're going to end up and where you've thrown your garbage out the last few years, you'll continue until they stop taking it, for one. The second thing is you'll look around for some waste management WM bin or a modern bin and stick it in there if you can.
Yeah, I think though that this is going to be an added expense of some kind. It's going to be a rather big inconvenience to the smaller businesses and churches that rely on this service. We're not getting universal service because those companies that are now responsible for paying for recycling have put limitations on where they're going to recycle. Well, and the region has not responded to that.
The worst of this is you're talking, mainly the larger companies, larger buildings, etc., all have their recycling bins and they have contracts with waste management walkers and other people. So there's no issue for those companies. Where it is the smaller companies that have been utilizing the normal standard, recycling.
Yeah. So basically, it says right at the beginning of the article that an end to curbside recycling for thousands of Niagara businesses, churches, and daycares
Yeah.
8 weeks from now. Recommended by councilors at the Niagara Regional Public Works Committee, but they aren't happy about it. Anyway, the Ontario government has essentially maintained reduction in service as part of a single province-wide blue box system that packaging producers fund. That's the packaging producers fund it and govern and operate it. But of course, they are shutting out what was just mentioned.
Yeah.
Non-eligible sources. Non-eligible sources include industrial, commercial, institutional properties, daycares, places of worship, and municipal facilities. Even the municipality is going to have to find its
For
own.
example, yeah, you go up streets like Victoria or Queen, and there's many streets. There's a regular. I'm not saying daily, but there's a more regular pickup than there is for residential streets on commercial properties. And if that's going to end, that leaves a lot of concern.
Yeah, so they're going to continue to get regular garbage, right?
Yeah.
So what I see happening is a lot of recycling getting pushed into regular garbage.
Yeah.
That's what I see. And I don't see anybody being able to monitor that. So if you got a big plastic bag and your dark plastic bag, green garbage bag, and you tie it up and it's full of recycling, who's going to know? There's not going to be recycling.
Yeah, you're not going to know.
Yeah. There's not going to be recycling police out there opening up your bag and saying what's in here.
Yeah.
We might have to go to clear bags. Now, what has happened in other communities long ago is a lot of people were cheating on the recycling and dumping in the regular garbage, whereas the municipality then mandated that you put your garbage in a clear plastic bag so that when
that's going to happen.
But it has happened in other communities, particularly down east. They had to go through that because there was so much cheating on the recycling thing. Now, what's going to happen is these institutions mentioned that won't be eligible for that garbage will get the regular garbage and their organics picked up, but they won't have the recycling picked up, which tells me more and more recycling will end up in regular garbage.
Yeah.
And we will add an expense for others who are a little bit more honest. They will have to contract out some other service, or they themselves will have to collect it up and take it to recycling areas. Now, if you go to when I was in New England, everybody took their own recycling to a recycling place. It was an area for recycling. So you went there, you collected up your own recycling. You went there and you threw out your glass, threw out your plastic, threw out your other stuff. It was all there arranged easily for you to put it. It was a big building, and there was these big bins that were below ground kind of thing, and you could throw all your. There were kind of little openings for each different type of recycling. So that's what the residents there did. We might find something like that in the future.
I'm still, so my issue is that you and I are not experts upon recycled material, and we shouldn't be the ones who are running that recycling. It needs to be going to a plant, and the plant actually doing the recycling anyway.
I don't know, and you find some resistance at the dumps now too. I tried to get rid of a lot of paper there one time. A lot of accumulated. When we do our bingo at Qantas TV bingo, we have to hold 4 years back of cards so that if anytime they want to come and audit us, they have all the materials there that go back 4 years to make
Yeah.
sure that everything's on the up and up. So we're
Yeah,
required to do that.
Yeah.
But what happens when we went there and we wanted to get rid of several years of stuff that we hadn't got rid of, we had stored, then we went to the dump to get rid of it. We would have had to pay a tipping fee for it because they weren't going to take our paper, which was different because if you had paper and other recycled stuff before that, you could just go there and get rid of it. But they decided they were going to put a tipping fee on it instead.
We have to keep 15 years worth of records.
Yeah, that's mostly hard copy, but you can probably do.
Copy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the point being is, once it's more than 15 years old, you still got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right. And, we normally have to get a shredding company in to do that.
Yeah, and then where does the paper go then?
Yeah. Well, it's up to the shredding company, isn't it?
So you pay them, they shred it, and they dispose of it.
The assumption is that they're going to recycle it properly, but it's
out of your hands.
It's an assumption. It's out of our hands, right? So all right. Moving on, Grimsby and Lincoln basically said, making an announcement that they're no longer going to be sharing volunteer fire services. There's no appetite, said the chief fire officer.
Oh, well, I would imagine that most of Lincoln would have been volunteer anyway, wouldn't it have been?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Well,
it's much smaller, less, not very densely populated.
Well, I think the same would be true for Grimsby.
Grimsby is getting bigger now because it's now like a satellite city almost. It has grown quite a bit, and I would imagine Grimsby would have a much bigger. There was a time when it was just pretty much a farmer community, but not anymore. I think it probably has a fair amount of means now and a higher population. So I don't know what they're going to do, but it was kind of interesting. But I don't know how they're going to deal with the fires.
Well, when I first came here, I'd say that probably that Beamsville had a larger population than Grimsby. But now you're right; it's probably the other way around.
Oh, yeah, quite a bit. So, and I don't know how much is populated down the highway there. But you're talking about Lincoln and West Lincoln, you're normally talking about much less population.
Yeah.
More farmers area.
Yeah. Okay. Just saying that in passing because there's just saying there's no appetite for that anymore. Shared services.
Okay. Interesting little sub note. Yeah.
Yeah. Jamaicans who've been working in Niagara returning home to homes that are devastated by the hurricane. I would have thought that many of the Niagara migrant workers would have probably already been gone by now. They're normally gone in October, aren't they?
Well, there's a bunch of them they hold over for all the other stuff that has to be done. There's maintenance of machinery, all that. So once the harvest is in and most of the bulk work is done, then there's things they have to do. They have to clean their storages, maintain the machinery. There's all kinds of peripheral work that still has to be done. So there would be a number of them that stayed longer to do extra work to prepare for the next season to get everything.
We don't work there, so we don't know their timetable, right?
No, I don't. But I can tell you that.
I get what you're saying. Because those sort of things, the machinery has to be maintained after the end of the season.
Yeah, there's storage areas, the residential areas, all that has to be maintained and brought up, so there'll be a bunch of extra work that has to be done after the harvest, and after most of the typical work they would do, then there is all kinds of other things that have to be continued.
Yeah, so for a lot of these guys, knowing that there was an earthquake, knowing there was a hurricane in their, in their homes last week, would be very awkward for them, wouldn't it?
Well, I on Wednesday night there was a lady there from Jamaica who was actually from around Montego Bay, which got hit really bad, and she showed me photographs and videos that her relatives had sent her on Wednesday night when I was at Toastmasters. It's absolute devastation. That just about everybody's roof was being ripped off.
Yeah.
You've got concrete buildings that were or stone buildings that were built that were knocked right over. There are cars being pushed around and wedged into places here and there or on top of one another. The roads are just mud, and actually people are making other ways of getting there, making a road beside the road kind of thing, because the roads were the natural places for mud to collect. The biggest problem, she was telling me, was getting through to the people, opening up means by which to reach people.
Yeah.
And there's some roads that will never be opened again. And having traveled a little bit into the interior of Jamaica myself, the roads are dubious there, and there are steep hills beside the roads, and even at the best of times, they have to worry about mudslides. So you can imagine how many mudslides and stuff would block the roads.
Oh yeah,
and debris of things.
Well, mudslides. Yeah, unfortunately, mudslides get unleashed by hurricanes, don't they?
Of course, because there's massive amounts of water.
Yeah,
and this was a slow-moving one. So it was a powerful hurricane that moved really slowly, and of course, that's a big dump of water. Like the ones that hit eastern seaboard of the United States of some years ago did the damage through water, and that was because of the amount of water it unleashed, not so much the wind velocity and anything like that, but it was the massive dump of water that did the damage there. In this particular case too, it was but the wind velocity was very powerful, and she even had some videos of people kind of standing behind sturdier buildings, and you could see the wind pushing everything around. It really knocked down. She showed me a before and after photograph, and she said this whole area where you couldn't see one village or one town from another, you now could, because the hurricane had knocked everything down between them. So all the vegetation, the trees, and everything is flat now because of the hurricane. So you can see things that you couldn't see before long distances. So it's going to be quite a while. And as far as our own migrant farmers that come up here and help, or migrant workers that help the farmers and that, they're really were biting their nails a lot. The one they talked about here.
The interesting thing is about this hurricane is that, as you said, it was slow. It hung around in the southern Caribbean for quite some time, changed its direction a few times, but is now well out in the mid-Atlantic. So by the 31st of October, it was an extratropical cyclone. So it's now in the mid-Atlantic heading towards Europe.
Yeah. Like I said before, any day now, the Irish are going to wake up to coconuts coming in from the sky. But
it will downgrade as it goes across there, because it will become just another typical storm that'll pound the west coast of Europe.
Well, one of the sad things here is the Jamaicans are still trying to recover from the last hurricane that hit them. They still haven't fully recovered from that one, even though it was much smaller. And So you've got this accumulated effect. It must have been pretty disheartening for all the people that went there and fixed all the problems that the previous hurricane had caused, and now have to do it all over again in a much bigger way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's the problem, of course, with hurricanes and that, right?
These are the things they're going to need. Of course, the usual, but other items being collected include buckets with lids, garbage bags, hygiene products, chainsaws, gloves, hammers, sledgehammers, helmets, hard hats, portable generators. That would be a big one. Rain gear, safety vests, goggles, shovels, spades. Now, one of the things I was surprised about was some of the photographs that I saw on Wednesday night from this Jamaican lady who has relatives right there where it was hit the hardest. I was very surprised to see a lot of power lines that maintained themselves. The houses are falling, the cars are being pushed around, the roads are full of mud.
The power lines are still.
Yeah, so the wooden poles are still up with power lines still hanging there. So somebody built them very robustly, probably thinking, it has to sustain hurricane force winds. However, there's no power going into that line yet, but at least it's still hanging. That's one thing they don't have to do in that particular.
They don't have to rebuild it. They can at least, once it's ready and they've inspected the line, they can just rehook the power up and, hey presto, it will be good again in those areas that need it.
So they need purification tablets, bottled water, food storage bin, washcloths, and crank radios. Crank radios, I used to have a couple of those. They're kind of convenient. If you get no power, you can crank them up and you can get good radio service. You can.
I love those crank radios. When you consider you can actually listen, you crank them up and you can listen to, or used to be able to listen to it for about 45 minutes with them.
Yes. Yeah.
And then all you have to do is crank them up again.
Well, they've had 32 people die, and they expect that to rise as more and more bodies are discovered.
When they find the bodies is when they, at the moment there are people missing. Hundreds of people missing that will end up turning into bodies once they move rubble and things like that, right?
Yeah, so they were hit with Hurricane Beryl last year, and they're still cleaning up that mess. But bang, Melissa comes along and says, "Have you seen nothing yet?" But of course, access to people, getting medicine, clean water, food. The United States has sent an army in there. Looks like the Canadian government has also sent personnel down there. Canadian government has come up with a quick $7 million to help with supplies and stuff, and also sent personnel that are used to disaster areas. So I think the world is responding very well. This is one thing that I can't fault Donald Trump with. He said when he heard about it, he says, "Well, we will be ready to respond," and he was, and they did. So, So one of the very few times I will tip my hat to the guy.
All right, moving on. So Bittle is basically saying the federal government budget, which is currently under review, is actually a generational investment. So he's talking about federal budget, which includes almost $90 billion for spending over the next 5 years. Most about bolstering Canada's economy and securing sovereignty.
Yes, and it's an enormous budget to a country that's already in debt big time like us. So we have commonality with the United States in this particular case. They're they're taking on an incredible debt with their big, beautiful bill, hoping that will stimulate. The idea there is you give the rich a lot of big tax breaks and you'll stimulate the economy.
I'm not sure that ever really works. It's nice in theory, but I don't see, trickle down. There's a lot of economists that have been looking at trickle down, wealth, and it doesn't trickle down very often.
Well, we see the accumulation of wealth in fewer and fewer hands, don't we?
Yeah.
Handfuls of oligarchs, basically, particularly the tech bros. Tech bros are but there are others too. Extraordinarily wealthy individuals wielding extraordinary power, and more and more of the wealth of the nation is being accumulated by fewer and fewer people at the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
That now the government thinks that the Trump government does is to maintain tax breaks and all kinds of things like that, to incur the deficit with hopes that will stimulate the economy enough to pay back, broaden the economy enough that the tax base make the country so prosperous that it will pay its own debts down. Wasn't that Trudeau's idea?
Yeah,
it didn't work very well, did it? Oh, the budget, well, the deficit will pay for
no,
itself.
you see, the deficit never pays for itself. That's the part of the problem. And the thing is that deficits always have to be, we have to figure a way out. Now, that's not to say that if you're going to be almost anything you build with government, if you're going to build new roads, new infrastructure, you have to borrow that money or you have to fund that money somehow. But usually new roads, new infrastructure are actually boost the economy. But it's like you have to be very careful about what actually boosts the economy.
Well, in this particular case, the government realizes that things have changed in our trading relationship with the United States and the world. It has seen some glaring weaknesses that were obvious to a lot of people before, but because we could get away with it, nobody did anything about it. One of those things, of course, was interprovincial trade. Other things were too many regulations on holding back development of LNG and mining. And I mean, if it took you 15 years just to get a look to open a mine, my God, if you're an investor and the government says, well, we're not going to be opening this mine for 15 years because it has to go through a review process of 15 years, how are you going to attract investment?
Yeah, there's no way if you want to open a mine, I get that there's bureaucracy involved in opening a mine, but 15 years is not an investment you're going to actually put in, is it?
Yeah, so part of what Carney's doing is speeding up processes, and he's also making sure the world at large knows that the Canadian government is investing big in Canada, which he hopes, and hope he's right, will attract investors who are now confident that they don't have to run into a whole lot of regulations, that the government will be a partner rather than in something that's in their way, a regulatory wall put up by the government. So what Carney's doing basically is he's trying to fast track, invest in the country to attract more investment, expanding, trying to expand what we have so that we could tap into the rest of the world's market, which we hadn't done. We were so comfortable in just trading with the United States. We go directly south. That's it. That this is something we should have woken up to a long time ago. As a matter of fact,
absolutely.
As a matter of fact, the NAFTA, one of the biggest problems that naysayers to NAFTA said way back in the 80s is if the United States changes its mind about NAFTA, we're in big trouble. Well, that's kind of like what's happening now, isn't it?
Yeah. So they were soothsayers of the future, and their concerns are being met right now. Now, one of the other questions that I have is that, and this is where Mr. Trudeau was a bit blasé about his stuff. We're at 42%. The federal debt as a percentage of the GDP is at 42.4%. That's too high. We need to reduce it. But but again, this government has to change from where the Trudeau government was.
Well, it has. The great irony here is that normally, if JT had stayed in office, he would have got wiped out, and the Conservatives would have taken the helm. But what has happened is Carney got in as a leader, a much more savvy dude, particularly with economy and economics and just practical business sense. And oddly enough, they in the United States, they tout, well, we got a businessman as a leader, so that's a good thing. Well, we really do have a businessman as a leader here too. He's one of the most successful capitalists in Canada right now. If you think of where he came from and where he is,
yeah,
and he's played the political and private, in investments and all that. So he knows what he's talking about. Whether or not this will fly is something. And I would mention, though, he took on so many of the conservative talking points. Got rid of he axed the tax, basically the carbon tax. He got rid of that, and he started doing a lot of the things that conservatives wanted to do.
They've reduced the number, like, for example, they've reduced the number of student visas being issued, which was of great concern to the company. We've got a number of changes that have happened exactly like that. The number of public service positions is going to be eliminated up to 40,000 of them, because there was massive, too big a addition to the bureaucracy.
Yeah, and we got scandal after scandal about the government and the contractors that the government used. Seriously, overcharging and getting away with it. We had a bloated government that encumbered the government process rather than made it efficient. So all those things the conservatives pointed out, Carney's done. Remember, Carney's drifted right close to the center, very centrist, very practical. It's a whole different thing. When JT was there, it was a lot of fluff and ideological posturing. I remember the Proud Boys. As soon as the Proud Boys were part of the January 6th riots in Washington, like, the Liberal government made a big deal of calling the Proud Boys a terrorist organization. Well, meantime, in the States, they didn't bother with that at all. They don't view them as a terrorist, but that was supposed to be a big deal for us. And when there was gun violence in Canada, they said, okay, we're going to put a lot of pressure on gun owners. But they neglected the fact that most of the bad guns came from over the border. Where the money should have been spent was on border services, stopping the guns where the real bad guys get their guns, not from private owners. So there was a lot of idealistic hoofra. Trudeau stuck his nose into India, where the farmers had a convoy to demonstrate against the government. They plugged up the roads and had a convoy, and Trudeau celebrated it. But when a convoy came to town, he called them racist and misogynists and that kind of thing. So there was all kinds of this ideological hoofra that really didn't make wasted time. It looks like Carney's just a plain ordinary businessman. Let's get to what we need to do. Let's get some business going. Let's get some LNG out to the market. Let's triple our business with China. Let's do this, do that. but that's going to cost. But the controversial part is this investment, this huge debt that we will now have to incur. Will it pay off? That is the thing. Is that a bit of a gamble, or is he more assured that this is really going to work, or is he just figuring there's only two ways we can go? We can shrink our economy. It has already shrunk by 1.8% because of the tariffs that have been imposed on us. But is this gamble really going to work?
Yeah. Okay. So there is also one other thing factoid in here that I think needs to be covered, is that there are 3 opposition MPs. They are shy 3 votes, or they were shy 3 votes. They're now shy, I think, 1 vote of getting the budget adopted. And the reason we're now shy 1, because a further Conservative MP has resigned, rather than he talked about crossing the floor and he resigned.
Well, we had the Eastern Provinces MP cross the floor a couple of days ago. He's been sort of coaxed across the floor for 5 years, I found out the other day. So the Liberals have seemed to think that was a possible switch for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So that guy did go across. Now I think with him, he sees he's going with he's put his sails towards the wind, basically, or where the wind can catch, because he could see in the next election he won't win. He only won by a small amount. Now the Junot, or what is his name?
Matt Genero,
he could not do that. His private constituents would never accept him crossing the floor to the Liberals. So his only option.
He's got a large majority in his Alberta constituency.
No, he doesn't have that much. He's been voted in for a while, and he had quite a bit of a challenge from a Liberal this time around. But I don't think that's really the motivation there. And I'm wondering, why doesn't he go and become a independent?
Yeah.
He could sit as an independent. That means he could still be a conservative leaning guy without having to listen to what appears to be the dictatorial governing of Pierre Poilievre. That's been an issue, a big time issue with the Conservatives. Initially, Poilievre reined them all in and stopped them from saying stupid stuff, and stopped them from made them much more careful about what they said to the press, etc. As a matter of fact, he refused to let them be even interviewed by the press a lot of the time, particularly around election time, because he didn't trust the press. But his management style is under review, and it doesn't look good for PP. He's got a leadership review coming up, I think in January, and he's had one person cross the floor and 1 resigned, all because of what these particular MPs have said about his management style among the Conservatives and his ideas. Are there going to be more?
Yeah. Well, that actually is a very good question, because at the moment, when we're talking about the budget, he has Carney requires 1 more vote. There's only 1 more vote he needs to actually pass the budget.
Yeah, I think he could have got it if, like I said before, if the NDP don't support it, they're going to get wasted.
Yeah,
utterly wasted in the next election.
Well, and also
one thing Poilievre did is he expanded the base of the Conservatives, and even though he lost his own seat and did not get the majority that was expected just months prior to the election, when JT was still kicking around. He he has expanded the base, and they did very well in the election, better than before, despite the fact that not winning, and stopped the government from having a majority. If they call an election now, they might lose there. And the signs in the party are there is unhappiness in that party, so they might find more people crossing
Well,
the
in
floor.
fact, actually, I think you will end up. The potential is there that with these moves right now, the potential is there that you might not. You might end up with two conservative parties.
You could. That's happened before. The Alliance and the Conservatives, they eventually got together and became the Conservative Alliance, and then changed the name to the Progressive Conservatives.
Yeah.
So the Alliance sort of took over the Conservatives for a while until they could reunite again. But
Yeah.
the NDP have to be very careful. They might not live through another election. They might not be represented at all.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And that's true whether they vote alongside the Liberals or oppose the Liberals.
Yeah, and we've had independents before too that have maintained themselves as independents. Nunciato or something, I can't remember the guy's name, the guy from Toronto. Yeah. He did not agree with what the Liberal government had been doing. He was a Liberal, and so he became an independent and stayed as an independent for quite a while in government.
But so again,
I expect we may have more independence.
But again, there's also another article that we have here that was saying basically an election that nobody wants, and it's incumbent upon the government and to find a way to pass this budget.
Yeah, I believe they will. I think the sort of idea that we're going to go into election over this budget is overstated. I mean, you have to mention it because the government does not have enough votes for it. But when you look at the different parties, like I said before, like I think the PCs and the Bloc are crossing their fingers, hoping that somebody will on the NDP support the budget, because they certainly don't want to go into election now. Look at the state of the Conservatives. They have an unpopular leader amongst themselves. It is apparent they lost 2 MPs in 1 week. And Pierre Poilievre has come up with a couple of different scandals on him. The way he raked the conspiracy theory he started with the RCMP thing without giving much proof. I have little reason to believe or not believe what he said. I need some proof. But he started that up. He started the conspiracy theory thing going. And we could see that in the United States and how untasteful it is for us up here in Canada when you've got somebody in the United States, a social democrat, let's say Mamdani, and he's a social democrat, and they're calling him an Islamo-communist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seriously, on the news, like on CNN, they're one of their conservative commentators or the Republican commentators said the money, like very little of the money that went to Mamdani's campaign was not Islamo-communist. Idiotic. When the White House speaker or course communications director Levitt talks about the Democrat Party being Hamas, communists, and Antifa, that kind of thing, and House Speaker says the same sort of thing.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
When you put a lot of nonsense conspiracy out there and you try to take advantage of your most ignorant people out there, that is distasteful up here. And every time that Poilievre sort of moves in that direction, tries to stir up some populist type reaction. It's not going to work for him up here.
Yeah. If this budget passes, it's because of a coup, says Red Dress Press. It's not conspiracy, and the act of interference which occurs, which all RCMP needs to start investigation, but the pathetic leadership of the RCMP lied and said they needed intent to start their investigation.
Yes. Remember when people are appointed by pretty much the liberals and things like that, and trying to curry favor with the Liberal Party, yeah, you definitely will find probably elements of corruption, inefficiency, looking the other way when they know they should. So there could be a lot to what Poilievre says, but let's see the proof. Yeah. You know, I'm not discounting what he says, but in order to go out there and say that kind of thing, give me the proof.
Yeah. Okay. So Niagara veteran Burdette Sisler becomes Canada's oldest living person at 110.
Yeah. Burdette Sisler, Bird, they call him. He was actually born in Akron, Ohio, and his father was moved up to Toronto to run some kind of company. I forget which. And eventually they stayed in and around Fort Erie area. He's a long career, and he was a veteran, and he's 111 years old. The previous oldest person was 113 in Quebec, has now moved on. Imagine living a century. And basically he's pretty quick yet. He's still got his cognitive abilities, hard of hearing, hard of seeing. Of course, these things are all breaking down. But he nominated Wayne Gates to be the MPP of the area in the NDP party. So he's got his noodle going. He seems to be having as best a quality of life as he can at 111. So hats off, and thank you very much for your service, sir. Thank you very much for your service.
And of course, Wayne Gates made a special announcement in Queen's Park in relation to this.
Well, I'm glad that he did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's what a local MP will do anyway. So good to see our local citizen being the oldest person in Canada. I'm sure you and I won't become that.
Yes, I doubt it. I doubt it very much. But nowadays, like there was a kind of a comment somewhere, 90 is the new 60. Well, I don't think so, but but I understand what they're trying to say there.
Well, it's like, I know we are moving, we are generally getting older as a population, but once you've gotten beyond, I guess, 60 or 70, you're always at risk from dying anyway.
Well, even in medieval times, and somebody took a study of it, and even during medieval or Middle English times, right before the modern age, one of the things was striking, that if you managed to get through childhood, right, which was the big thing. I mean, at least 20% of kids died before they were 5 years old, and then another percentage of them died before they got to adolescence. If you survived that, you then would have a survivability rate of average of about 50 or 60 years old. But then if you managed to get past the longevity didn't change much. Like there were some people that were just predisposed to living long times. And I mean, they had an example of a guy in Ireland that died of drowning at the age of 103 or something like that. You know what I mean? When the bridge washed out when he happened to be on it.
And that's a key factor today. Why people in Europe had many very large families was because, as you said, 20% of them died out before the age of 5, and probably a further 20% of them died out before they reached the age of majority, and therefore would not have kids. So that's why you would have like 5 or 6 in a family, because you'd only get 2 or 3 that would reach maturity and could therefore have children.
Oh yeah, we hear
Yeah.
tragic stories. There was they studied one woman, young woman who died. I suppose in her 40s. She had 12 children, and all of them had died.
Yeah.
Before
Well, you see, my grandmother, she had 10 children in all. 4 of them died. 4 of them died before they reached maturity, and so I've got 6. Had 6 uncles and aunts.
Well, my great grandparents had 17 kids, but 4 of them died in infancy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other 13 survived, but even then they had a struggle of a life. But other than that, I would say mostly that's just a curiosity, that there's some people that just have genetic resilience. The difference is the average person now is growing older, and is healthier. So they had the life, I think at the turn of the century, the life expectancy was like 47, 48 years old in 1900.
Yeah.
And it gradually grew up. But when people were dying, when I was a kid, I remember people were dying in their 60s, in their 70s. That was very typical.
Yeah, but you see, okay, so in that regard, both my grandparents, I don't know about my grandfather on my father's side, but my grandmothers both died at 92, and my grandfather on my mother's side died around about just around about 90. Right, but my parents both died in their 80s.
Yeah, so there's different factors. Like a farmer, like a guy was telling me about. He had come from a farm family, and all of his relatives had lived well into their 80s, going back a few generations. But suddenly, during the 60s and stuff, people started dying in their 60s, and it turned out to be the chemicals and stuff. They were dying of cancer, and that was directly related to the chemicals and stuff they were using on the farm.
Yep.
So that shortened what should have been a longer lifespan. So there are other factors involved here, but generally speaking, the average person's life is extended. But this guy comes from a different generation where the life expectancy was a lot lower, and he's 111. So hats off to him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And I think we can kind of call it quits at that point.
Yes, we can. And mention Gaza again. I haven't heard much about it in the news of late. The Israelis keep around, start dropping bombs and stuff like that. I don't know how long this is going to hold out. The very idea that Trump may there's a lot of issues with his attention span. Basically, if he can stick with this one, maybe he can at least stop the war and maybe stop the expansion. The annexation of the West Bank. Remember, he is probably listening to a lot of the people in the Far East, or the Mideast, like countries like the UAE, Darfur, and Saudi Arabia, that have money to invest in the United States and have his ear about the Palestine-Gaza thing. Also the threats of Turkey and of that kind of thing. So the Israeli lobby may be losing a bit of its grip, but Netanyahu is a master politician, and he's very persuasive, and he's, in my view, evil. He just—
You're not allowed to say that. You can't say that on a program.
Maybe not, but he just he just has so little regard for human life. I don't know. But that was the same as Yaya Sinwar too. So, like I say, that to me, those two guys are mirror images of each other.
Yeah, they are. Yes, they are. They were. You know, Yahya was a mirror image of Netanyahu. That's for sure.
You know, so let's pray for peace there. Let's hope it happens, because really they have so much to do there, and they've many. There's a very young population there. Over half of it's children, and I think 60% of it's under 18, or no, 65%. A whole 50% of it or more is under 14. So they have a future that needs to be had, and they got to get that started. I mean, there's a whole generation of young people that have to get started in life, get jobs, get married, got all that stuff, and maybe finally see peace. But it is a tenuous thing at this particular time, and let's just pray for peace.
Yeah.